The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Redemption, Colorado as Sophia Nash stumbled from the stagecoach, her once fine dress torn and muddied from weeks of hard travel. The year was 1876, and like many who found themselves in this remote corner of the frontier, she had come west not by choice but by desperate necessity. Her hands trembled as she clutched a crumpled wanted poster bearing her late husband's face, a man whose crimes had followed her even after his death at the end of a hangman's rope. "Last stop, madam," the driver called, tossing down her single valise with little ceremony. "Welcome to Redemption." The name of the town struck her as a cruel joke. There was no redemption to be found for a woman who had fled Philadelphia with creditors and vengeance seekers nipping at her heels. 24 years old and already a widow, Sophia had nothing but $10 sewn into her hemline and a skill for numbers that no respectable establishment would value in a woman. Redemption wasn't much to look at: a main street lined with weathered buildings, a saloon with piano music spilling into the evening air, and the ever-present dust that seemed to coat everything in this part of the country. Sophia pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and took a hesitant step forward, unsure where to go or whom to trust. "You look like you could use a hot meal and a place to rest your head," came a deep voice from behind her. Sophia whirled around, nearly losing her balance. Standing before her was a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His clothes were well-worn but clean denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a tan vest. The silver star pinned to his chest identified him as the local law. "Sheriff Owen Stanton," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "And you would be?" Sophia hesitated, wondering if she should give a false name. But something in the sheriff's steady gaze told her that lies wouldn't serve her well here. "Sophia Nash," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've come from Philadelphia." The sheriff nodded, his expression revealing nothing. "Philadelphia's a long way from Redemption. What brings you to our little corner of nowhere?" "A fresh start," she said simply, unwilling to reveal more. Sheriff Stanton studied her for a moment longer before bending down to pick up her valise. "Well, Miss Nash, the boarding house is just up the street. Mrs. Henderson runs a decent place, clean beds, hot food, and she doesn't ask too many questions." "I appreciate your kindness, Sheriff, but I don't." Sophia paused, embarrassed to admit her financial situation. "First night's on the town," he said, seeming to read her thoughts. "We've got a policy here in Redemption. Newcomers get one night's room and board. After that, you're on your own." "I couldn't possibly. It's not charity, Miss Nash. It's just how we do things here." His voice was firm but not unkind. "Come morning, if you're looking for work, the Mercantile might need help with their books. Owner's getting on in years, and his figures aren't what they used to be." Sophia felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps her skills wouldn't be wasted after all. "Thank you, Sheriff. I'll inquire tomorrow." They walked in silence through the darkening streets. Sophia was acutely aware of the curious glances from the townspeople they passed. A woman traveling alone was unusual enough, but one being escorted by the sheriff was bound to start tongues wagging. "Don't mind them," Sheriff Stanton said quietly. "Small town. Not much happens here worth talking about." "And a strange woman arriving on the evening stage qualifies as excitement?" she asked, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "Afraid so." The sheriff's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "But they'll find something new to gossip about soon enough." The boarding house was a two-story clapboard building with a small porch and neatly curtained windows. Mrs. Henderson turned out to be a plump, gray-haired woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She showed Sophia to a small but clean room on the second floor, informing her that supper would be served in half an hour. "Thank you again, Sheriff," Sophia said when they reached her door. "Owen," he corrected. "Sheriff's just what I do, not who I am." "Owen, then." The name felt strange on her tongue. "I truly appreciate your help." He nodded, setting her valise just inside the door. "Get some rest, Miss Nash. Redemption might not look like much, but it's a good place for starting over." He touched his hat brim again and turned to leave. "How did you know?" she called after him. He paused, looking back at her with those storm-gray eyes. "Know what?" "That I needed to start over." A shadow crossed his face. Most folks who end up in Redemption aren't just passing through. They're running from something or someone. He shrugged. "I was the same way once." Before she could ask more, he was gone, boots echoing on the wooden stairs. Sophia closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. The small room felt like a sanctuary after weeks of travel, and for the first time since fleeing Philadelphia, she allowed herself to relax slightly. As promised, supper was served promptly. The dining room held 3 other boarders: an elderly schoolteacher, a young clerk who worked at the bank, and a middle-aged woman who ran the millinery shop. They regarded Sophia with open curiosity, but were polite enough not to pry beyond the most basic inquiries about her journey. Later, as she lay in the narrow bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier town, Sophia found herself thinking about Sheriff Owen Stanton. There was something in his eyes that spoke of his own painful past, a knowledge of hardship that had recognized the same in her. It was disconcerting to be read so easily by a stranger. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Sophia dressed carefully in her one good remaining dress, a navy blue cotton, with only minimal fraying at the cuffs, and pinned her dark hair into a neat bun. First impressions would be critical if she hoped to secure employment. Mrs. Henderson was setting out plates when Sophia entered the dining room. "Sleep well, dearie?" she asked, pouring a cup of strong coffee. "Better than I have in weeks, thank you." Sophia accepted the cup gratefully. "Sheriff said you might be looking for work at the Mercantile. Old Mr. Garrison could use the help, that's certain. His arthritis makes it hard for him to write in those ledgers, and his eyes aren't what they used to be." "Yes, I plan to inquire this morning." Mrs. Henderson nodded approvingly. "Good girl. Not afraid of honest work, I see. Too many young women these days expecting to be taken care of." She placed a plate of eggs and bacon before Sophia. "Eat up now. Can't face the day on an empty stomach." After breakfast, Sophia made her way to Garrison's Mercantile, a large establishment that seemed to sell everything from farm implements to fancy ribbons. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, announcing her presence to the white-haired man behind the counter. "Good morning," she said, summoning her courage. "I'm Sophia Nash. Sheriff Stanton mentioned you might be in need of assistance with your books." Mr. Garrison peered at her over wire-rimmed spectacles. "Did he now? Well, Owen's got a good head on his shoulders. You know figures, do you?" "Yes, sir. I worked as a bookkeeper for my father's business in Philadelphia." "Philadelphia, eh?" He scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Had a cousin who went east once. Never did cotton to city living. Too many people," he said. "It can be overwhelming," Sophia agreed. "Well, let's see what you can do." He led her to a small desk in the corner where a large ledger lay open. "Been meaning to reconcile the accounts for weeks now, but these old fingers don't cooperate like they used to." For the next hour, Sophia demonstrated her skills, carefully checking his entries and making corrections where needed. Mr. Garrison watched, occasionally nodding in approval. "You've got a talent for this," he said finally. "I can offer you room and board at Mrs. Henderson's plus $5 a week. Store opens at 7, closes at 6, half day on Sundays." Sophia's heart leaped. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Thank you, Mr. Garrison. I accept." "Good, good." He shuffled back to the counter. "You can start right away. And call me Albert." "Everyone does." The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine. Sophia worked diligently at the Mercantile, gradually earning the respect of both Albert and the townspeople who came to do business. She discovered that life in Redemption had a rhythm of its own, slower than Philadelphia, but no less complex in its social dynamics. She saw Sheriff Stanton occasionally, usually when he came into the store for supplies or when she passed him on her way to and from the boarding house. Their exchanges were brief but cordial, and each time, Sophia found herself wondering about the man behind the badge. One evening in late October, as Sophia was closing up the store, the door opened, sending the bell into a frantic jingle. She looked up to see Owen standing there, his expression grim. "Miss Nash," he said, removing his hat. "I'm afraid I need to speak with you." A cold dread settled in her stomach. "What is it?" "Had a telegram from the marshal in Denver." He hesitated, his fingers working the brim of his hat. "There are men looking for you. Associates of your late husband, I believe." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. "How did they find me?" "They haven't. Not yet." Owen stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But they're checking every town along the stagecoach routes. It's only a matter of time before they reach Redemption." I should leave, she whispered, panic rising in her chest. Tonight. And go where? Owen's voice was gentle but firm. Winter's coming. Traveling alone would be dangerous, especially with these men on your trail. I can't stay here. I won't bring trouble to the people who've been kind to me. Owen was silent for a moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. There's another option. My ranch is about 5 miles outside of town. It's remote, hard to find unless you know where to look. You could stay there until the danger passes. Sophia stared at him, surprised by the offer. Your ranch? But what would people say? A hint of a smile crossed his face. They'd say you've taken a position as housekeeper for a confirmed bachelor who can't cook worth a damn. Despite her fear, Sophia found herself smiling back. Is that true? About the cooking? Afraid so. Nearly burned down the place trying to make flapjacks last month. His expression grew serious again. It would be purely proper, Miss Nash. You'd have your own room, and I spend most nights in town anyway, keeping the peace. Sophia considered his offer. The thought of running again was exhausting, and with winter approaching, her options were limited. When would I need to leave? Tonight would be best. I'll speak to Albert and Mrs. Henderson. Explain that I've hired you away from the mercantile. He paused. You should know what you're running from, though. Those men, they believe your husband stole money from them before he was arrested. He did, Sophia admitted quietly. And they think I know where it is. Do you? She met his gaze steadily. No. Thomas never told me anything about his business dealings. I didn't even know he was involved in criminal activities until the police came to arrest him. Owen nodded, seeming to accept her word. Pack your things. I'll come for you at midnight. True to his word, Owen arrived at the boarding house just as the town clock struck 12. Mrs. Henderson, who had been informed of the situation, helped Sophia slip out the back door where the sheriff waited with a wagon. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky. Sophia sat close to Owen on the wagon seat, grateful for the warmth of the blanket he had wrapped around her shoulders. It's beautiful, she murmured, gazing up at the vast expanse above them. One of the things I love about this country, Owen replied. No matter what happens down here, those stars keep right on shining. They rode in companionable silence for a time. The only sounds the creaking of the wagon and the steady clip-clop of the horse's hooves. You never asked, Sophia said finally. Asked what? What my husband did. What crime he committed. Owen kept his eyes on the road ahead. Figured you'd tell me if you wanted to. He was a thief and a con man, she said, the words bitter on her tongue. He swindled people out of their life savings with promises of investments that didn't exist. And I never suspected a thing. You trusted him. That's not a crime, isn't it? I should have known. There were signs, the unexplained absences, the sudden wealth, the strange men who came to our home. Sophia clutched the blanket tighter. I chose not to see them because I wanted to believe I had married a good man. We all have blind spots when it comes to those we love, Owen said quietly. Doesn't make you guilty of his crimes. They crested a small hill, and suddenly, the ranch came into view, a modest cabin with a barn and corral, nestled in a small valley protected by pine-covered hills. It's not much, Owen said as he helped her down from the wagon. But it's peaceful. The cabin was indeed modest, but well-built and clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with a kitchen area along another. 2 doors led off to what Sophia assumed were bedrooms. This one's yours, Owen said, opening the door to a small but comfortable-looking room with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a window that faced east. Bathroom's out back, I'm afraid. Haven't gotten around to putting in indoor plumbing yet. It's lovely, Sophia said, meaning it. After the cramped room at the boarding house, this felt spacious and private. I'll get a fire going before I head back to town. Owen moved to the fireplace, expertly arranging kindling and logs. There's food in the pantry, nothing fancy, but enough to keep you going. I'll bring more supplies tomorrow. As promised, Owen returned the next day with additional provisions and news from town. No strangers had arrived yet, but he had sent word to neighboring settlements to be on the lookout and to direct any inquiries about Sophia elsewhere. Days turned into weeks, and Sophia settled into life at the ranch. To keep busy, she cleaned and organized the cabin, mended Owen's clothes, and even attempted to teach herself to cook using the dog-eared recipe book she found in the kitchen. Her efforts were met with varying degrees of success, but Owen ate everything she prepared with appreciation. He spent more time at the ranch than he had initially suggested, often returning before sunset to help with chores around the property. Sophia discovered that he had been a rancher before becoming sheriff, raising horses until a devastating fire 3 years earlier had destroyed most of his stock. The ranch was smaller now, just a few horses and chickens, but Owen spoke of rebuilding someday. They fell into an easy rhythm, sharing meals and conversation in the evenings before Owen would ride back to town for his nightly rounds. Sometimes he stayed overnight in the second bedroom, especially when the weather turned bad or when he had spent the day working the ranch. One evening in early December, as they sat by the fire after supper, Owen told her about how he had come to redemption. Born in Boston to a wealthy merchant family, he had rebelled against his father's plans for him to join the family business. "I read dime novels about the West," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "Thought I'd be a grand adventure. Reality was somewhat different." "How so?" Sophia asked, curled in the armchair opposite his. "Well, for one thing, nobody mentioned the blisters." He held up calloused hands. "First week working cattle, I could barely hold a fork. And the loneliness, that was something the novels left out entirely." "Is that why you became sheriff? For the company?" Owen chuckled. "Not exactly. Previous sheriff was killed in a bank robbery. Town needed someone, and I'd built a reputation for being fair-minded and good with a gun. Wasn't much of a choice, really." Sophia studied him in the firelight, noting the fine lines around his eyes and the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar. At 32, Owen Stanton was a man who carried responsibility easily, who understood duty and honor in ways that her husband never had. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Leaving Boston?" He considered the question seriously before answering. "No. Despite everything, the hardships, the fire, even wearing this damn badge, I've never regretted coming west." His eyes met hers across the hearth. "What about you? Do you regret leaving Philadelphia?" "I didn't have much choice," she reminded him. "But if you could go back? If those men weren't looking for you?" Sophia thought about the life she had left behind, the social calls, the charity committees, the endless rounds of parties where appearances mattered more than substance. "No," she said finally. "I don't think I would go back. There's a freedom here that I never had in Philadelphia." Owen nodded, as if her answer confirmed something he had suspected. "Freedom's a precious thing, worth fighting for." The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but later that night, as Sophia lay in her bed listening to the wind whistle around the eaves, she thought about freedom and what it truly meant. For the first time since her husband's arrest, she felt as if she might be able to build a life that was truly her own. The following week brought the first heavy snowfall of the season. Owen remained at the ranch, unable to safely make the journey back to town. They spent the days in domestic tranquility, Owen repairing tools in the barn, while Sophia baked bread and tended to the cabin. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, sometimes reading aloud from Owen's small collection of books, sometimes simply talking. Sophia found herself sharing stories from her childhood, her father's business failures, her mother's subsequent withdrawal into illness, the pressure to make a good match to restore the family's fortunes. "So you married Thomas to save your family?" Owen asked one night. "Partly," she admitted. "But I also thought I loved him. He was charming, attentive, everything a young girl dreams of in a husband." "And now? What does Sophia Nash dream of now?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know," she said honestly. "For so long, I've just been trying to survive. I haven't allowed myself to dream." Owen's expression was thoughtful. "Maybe it's time you did." The snow continued for 3 days, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. On the morning of the 4th day, the sun emerged, transforming the landscape into a dazzling wonderland of crystal and light. "It's beautiful," Sophia breathed, standing at the cabin door. "Want to see more of it?" Owen asked, coming to stand beside her. "I could saddle the horses, show you the rest of the property." They rode out after breakfast, Sophia bundled in layers of borrowed clothing. Owen led her through snow-covered meadows and along the frozen creek that marked the boundary of his land. Despite the cold, Sophia felt a sense of exhilaration as they galloped across an open field, her breath fogging in the crisp air. They stopped to rest the horses near a stand of pines, dismounting to stretch their legs. Sophia was laughing at something Owen had said when she lost her footing on a patch of ice and started to fall. Owen caught her, strong arms pulling her against his chest. For a moment, they stood perfectly still, their faces inches apart. Sophia could see flecks of blue in Owen's gray eyes, feel the warmth of his breath on her cold cheeks. Something shifted between them, a recognition of feelings that had been growing since that first night in Redemption. Owen released her gently, clearing his throat. We should head back. Light doesn't last long this time of year. The ride back to the cabin was quieter, both lost in their own thoughts. That evening, as they sat by the fire, there was a new awareness between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of possibilities neither was ready to voice. The next morning, Owen announced he needed to return to town. Deputy's been handling things, but I should check in, let folks know we're all right out here. Of course, Sophia said, ignoring the pang of disappointment she felt. I'll be fine on my own. I'll be back tomorrow, he promised. Sooner if the weather holds. After he left, the cabin seemed unnaturally quiet. Sophia busied herself with chores, trying not to think about how quickly she had grown accustomed to Owen's presence, how empty the place felt without him. She was kneading dough for bread when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Thinking Owen had returned early, she wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the window, a smile already forming on her lips. The smile died when she saw 3 riders approaching, none of them Owen. Panic seized her as she recognized one of the men, Richard Barlow, her husband's former business partner and the most dangerous of his associates. Sophia's mind raced. How had they found her? There was no time to flee. The men were already dismounting in the yard. She looked frantically around the cabin for a weapon, settling on the rifle Owen kept above the fireplace. She had never fired a gun in her life, but they didn't need to know that. The knock on the door was polite, almost casual. Hello, the house, called a voice she remembered all too well. Anybody home? Sophia stood to the side of the door, rifle clutched in trembling hands. What do you want? Why, Mrs. Nash, is that any way to greet old friends? Barlow's voice was smooth as silk. We've come a long way to see you. We're not friends, Mr. Barlow. Please leave. I'm afraid we can't do that until we've had a little chat about your husband's business affairs. There was a pause. You can make this easy or difficult, madam, but one way or another, we're coming in. Sophia's finger tightened on the trigger. I have a rifle pointed at this door, Mr. Barlow. If you try to enter, I will shoot. Laughter greeted her threat. Now, Mrs. Nash, we both know you're not the type to pull that trigger. Why don't you put down the gun and open the door like a civilized person? I suggest you do as the lady says. Owen's voice, coming from somewhere outside, sent a wave of relief through Sophia. She heard shuffling, the sound of weapons being drawn. This doesn't concern you, Mr. Barlow said. We just want to talk to the widow Nash about some property that belongs to us. Well now, that's where you're wrong, Owen replied. Anything that concerns Miss Nash concerns me. I'm Sheriff Owen Stanton, and you boys are trespassing on private property. There was a tense silence. Then Barlow spoke again, his voice harder now. Sheriff, we don't want any trouble. We just want what's ours. Her husband stole $50,000 from us before he was arrested. We know she knows where it is. She says she doesn't. Owen's voice was calm. And I believe her. Well, that's touching, but we're not leaving without our money. You've got 2 choices, Owen said. You can ride out of here now, alive and well, or you can try to push this and see how it ends. Your decision. Sophia held her breath, the rifle heavy in her hands. Through the window, she could see Owen standing near the barn, his stance relaxed but alert, hand hovering near his holster. Long seconds ticked by before Barlow spoke again. This isn't over, Sheriff. That money belongs to us, and we mean to have it. It's over for today, Owen replied. Mount up and ride out. Don't stop until you're clear of my jurisdiction. More tense moments passed before Sophia heard the sounds of the men retreating, horses snorting and saddles creaking as they mounted. She watched through the window as they rode away, Barlow turning once to look back at the cabin with cold, calculating eyes. Only when they were out of sight did Owen approach the cabin. Sophia opened the door, the rifle still clutched in her hands. Are you all right? He asked, gently taking the weapon from her. She nodded, though her entire body was trembling. How did you know? I didn't. Was on my way back when I saw their tracks heading this way. He set the rifle aside and led her to a chair. Sit before you fall down. Sophia sank into the chair, the reality of what had just happened washing over her. They found me. They found the ranch, Owen corrected. And I suspect it was more luck than anything else. Probably been checking every homestead in the area. What do we do now, she asked. They won't give up, Owen. They're convinced I know where Thomas hid the money. Owen knelt before her, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. Do you know where it is? Sophia met his gaze squarely. No, I've told you the truth from the beginning. Thomas never confided in me about his business. I was just decoration, a pretty wife to make him appear respectable. Owen nodded, squeezing her hands gently. Then we'll handle this together. I'll send a wire to the federal marshal. Barlow and his friends are wanted in several territories. In the meantime, you're coming back to town with me. But they know I'm in the area now. Won't that put the townspeople in danger? Redemption takes care of its own, Owen said firmly. And like it or not, you're one of us now. His words warmed something inside her that had been cold for a very long time. Thank you, she whispered. They gathered her belongings quickly, Owen keeping a watchful eye on the approach to the ranch. The ride back to town was tense, both of them alert for any sign of Barlow and his men, but they reached Redemption without incident. Rather than returning to the boarding house, Owen took Sophia to the jailhouse, where the deputy, a young man named Timothy, greeted them with surprise. Got ourselves a situation, Tim, Owen explained, helping Sophia remove her coat. Need you to gather the town council at the church in an hour. And send Billy over to the telegraph office with a message for Marshal Dixon in Denver. As Timothy hurried to carry out his instructions, Owen led Sophia to a small room behind his office. It's not much, he apologized, but it's safer than the boarding house for now. Nobody will look for you here. The room was sparsely furnished with a cot, a small table, and a chair. A tiny window high on the wall let in a bit of light. It's fine, Sophia assured him. I don't need much. While she settled in, Owen drafted his telegram to the marshal and prepared for the town council meeting. Sophia could hear him moving about in the outer office, his voice occasionally rising as he spoke with people who came to inquire about the sudden activity. An hour later, he returned to the small room. I need to go to the meeting, he said. Will you be all right here alone? Yes, but... Sophia hesitated. What are you going to tell them? The truth, Owen said simply. That there are dangerous men looking for you. And that as a community, we need to decide how to handle it. They might not want to risk themselves for a stranger. Owen's expression softened. You'd be surprised. Folks out here understand about fresh starts and leaving the past behind. Most of them have done it themselves. After he left, Sophia sat on the edge of the cot, anxiety gnawing at her. What if the town decided she wasn't worth the trouble? What if they insisted she leave to protect themselves? She wouldn't blame them. She was, after all, bringing danger to their doorsteps. It was nearly 2 hours before Owen returned, his expression unreadable. Sophia stood, bracing herself for the worst. Well? She asked when he didn't immediately speak. A slow smile spread across his face. Seems you've made quite an impression on Redemption, Miss Nash. The council voted unanimously to stand with you against Barlow and his men. Relief made her knees weak. They did. Albert Garrison said you're the best bookkeeper he's ever had. Mrs. Henderson said you're the kind of decent young woman this town needs more of. Even old Judge Wilson, who doesn't like anybody, spoke up for you. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Owen told her gently. Just accept that there are people here who care about what happens to you. That night, as Sophia lay on the narrow cot in the back room of the jailhouse, she reflected on Owen's words. People who cared about what happened to her. It had been so long since she had felt that kind of belonging, that sense of community. And then there was Owen himself. The way he had faced down Barlow without hesitation, the gentle way he had reassured her afterward, the respect he showed her at every turn. He was unlike any man she had ever known, steady, honorable, and kind in a way that asked for nothing in return. Morning brought news that Marshal Dixon would arrive within the week. In the meantime, the town organized itself for potential trouble. Men took turns standing watch at the town's approaches. Women made sure children stayed close to home, and everyone remained vigilant for strangers. Sophia insisted on returning to work at the mercantile, unwilling to hide while others risked themselves on her behalf. Owen reluctantly agreed but assigned Deputy Timothy to remain nearby at all times. 3 tense days passed with no sign of Barlow. On the 4th day, Marshal Dixon arrived, a tall, lean man with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He listened carefully as Owen explained the situation, occasionally asking Sophia direct questions about her husband's activities. "Mrs. Nash," the marshal said finally, "I believe you when you say you don't know where the money is. But that won't stop Barlow from trying to get it out of you. He's not a man who takes no for an answer." "What do you suggest?" Owen asked. "We could try to draw them out," Dixon mused. "Let word spread that Mrs. Nash has decided to cooperate, that she's willing to lead them to the money." "Absolutely not," Owen said sharply. "We're not using her as bait." "It would be my decision," Sophia pointed out. "And if it would end this once and for all." "No." Owen's voice was firm. "There has to be another way." They debated late into the night, finally agreeing on a compromise. Marshal Dixon would spread word that he was escorting Sophia to Denver to stand trial as an accomplice in her husband's crimes. The hope was that Barlow would attempt to intercept them, allowing Dixon and his deputies to capture the gang without endangering the town. 2 days later, Sophia found herself seated in a stagecoach beside Marshal Dixon, with Owen riding alongside as an additional escort. The plan was to travel only as far as the next town, where Dixon's deputies were waiting, then circle back to Redemption once Barlow was apprehended. They had been on the road for less than an hour when the attack came. 3 riders appeared from a stand of trees, guns drawn. The stagecoach driver reined in hard, nearly sending Sophia tumbling from her seat. "Right on time," Dixon muttered, checking his weapon. "Stay down and stay inside, Mrs. Nash." Before she could respond, gunfire erupted outside. Sophia crouched on the floor of the coach, heart pounding as bullets thudded into the wooden sides. Through the window, she caught glimpses of Owen exchanging fire with one of the attackers, his face set in grim determination. The shootout was brief but intense. When the firing stopped, Dixon cautiously peered outside. "All clear," he called. "We got 2 of them. Looks like Barlow got away." Sophia scrambled from the coach to find Owen kneeling beside one of the fallen men, examining a wound on his arm. "You're hurt," she gasped, rushing to his side. "It's just a graze," he assured her, though the blood seeping through his sleeve suggested otherwise. "We need to get him back to town," Dixon said, already signaling to his deputies who had emerged from their hiding places. "And fast. Barlow's still out there, and he'll be looking for revenge now." The return journey to Redemption was tense, with Owen growing paler by the mile. By the time they reached town, he was barely conscious, the makeshift bandage on his arm soaked through with blood. Doc Miller met them at the jailhouse, his expression grave as he examined Owen's wound. "Bullet's still in there," he announced. "Need to get it out before infection sets in. Help me get him to my surgery." The next few hours were among the most agonizing of Sophia's life. She paced the waiting room of the doctor's small office, jumping at every sound from the street, terrified that it might be Barlow coming to finish what he had started. When Doc Miller finally emerged, wiping blood from his hands, Sophia's heart nearly stopped. "How is he?" "He'll live," the doctor said wearily. "Bullet missed the major vessels, thank the Lord. He's lost a fair amount of blood, though, and he'll need time to recover." "Can I see him?" Doc Miller hesitated, then nodded. "Just for a few minutes. He needs rest more than anything now." Owen lay still and pale on the examination table, his injured arm heavily bandaged and resting on a pillow. His eyes fluttered open when Sophia approached, a weak smile touching his lips. "Hey there," he murmured. "Hey yourself," she replied, fighting back tears. "You gave us quite a scare. Did we get them all?" Sophia shook her head. "Barlow escaped. Marshal Dixon has men searching, but—" Owen tried to sit up, wincing with the effort. "You need to stay hidden. If Barlow's still out there, shoo," she soothed, gently pressing him back down. "Don't worry about me. Just focus on getting better." His fingers caught hers, surprisingly strong despite his weakened state. "Sophia, if anything happened to you—" "Nothing's going to happen," she promised. "Marshal Dixon has deputies watching the doctor's office and the jailhouse. We're safe." Owen didn't look convinced, but exhaustion was clearly overtaking him. His eyes drifted closed, his grip on her hand loosening. Sophia stayed until his breathing deepened into sleep, then reluctantly withdrew, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead before she left. Marshal Dixon was waiting outside with Doc Miller. "How is he?" the marshal asked. "Resting," Sophia replied, "but worried about Barlow." "As he should be," Dixon said grimly. "I've got men watching all approaches to town, but Barlow's crafty. He might try to slip in after dark." "What do we do?" Sophia asked. "We wait," Dixon said simply, "and we stay alert." The night passed without incident, but the next morning brought news that sent a chill through the town. One of Dixon's deputies had been found dead on the road to Denver, his throat cut. Barlow was sending a message. Sophia insisted on remaining at Owen's side as he recovered at Doc Miller's. Despite the marshal's concerns about having them both in one location, she refused to leave, pointing out that they were safer together than apart. Owen regained his strength slowly, chafing at the enforced rest. By the third day, he was sitting up and arguing with Doc Miller about returning to duty. "Not until I say so," the doctor said firmly. "That arm needs at least another week to heal properly." "A week?" Owen protested. "Doc, I can't lie here while Barlow's still out there threatening my town." "Your town will manage," Doc Miller replied. "Marshal Dixon has things well in hand." But as the days passed with no sign of Barlow, tension in Redemption began to ease. Some of Dixon's deputies were recalled to Denver for other duties, and life in the small town started to return to normal. A week after the ambush, Doc Miller finally declared Owen fit enough to return to his own quarters, though still not ready for full duty. Sophia helped him settle into his rooms above the jailhouse, fussing over the arrangement of his few possessions in a way that made him smile. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said as she plumped pillows on his bed. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself." "I know you are," she replied. "But humor me. It makes me feel useful." Owen caught her hand as she passed, drawing her to sit beside him on the edge of the bed. "You are useful, Sophia. More than that, you're—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "You're important. To me." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. "Owen, I know the timing is all wrong," he continued, his gray eyes intent on hers. "With Barlow still out there and everything that's happened. But I need you to know how I feel. These past weeks, having you at the ranch, seeing your strength and courage. I've never met anyone like you." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "I don't deserve happiness, not after everything that's happened." Owen's hand came up to cup her cheek. "Then deserve me anyway," he said softly. "Deserve us. We've both had our share of hardship, Sophia. Maybe it's time we allowed ourselves some joy." She looked into his eyes and saw the future she had never dared to dream of, a life built on mutual respect and genuine affection, a partnership of equals. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll try," she promised. Their first kiss was gentle, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. When they finally parted, both were breathless, Owen's good arm holding her close against his chest. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured against her hair. "Just to sleep," he added quickly. I don't want to let you go." Sophia hesitated, aware of the impropriety but unable to deny the rightness of being in his arms. "Yes," she said simply. That night, they lay together in Owen's narrow bed, her head on his shoulder, their fingers intertwined. They talked quietly of small things: his childhood in Boston, her dreams of someday traveling to San Francisco, the books they had both read and loved. In the darkness, it was easy to imagine that the danger had passed, that they were just a man and woman beginning a life together. Morning brought reality back in the form of Deputy Timothy, pounding on Owen's door with news a rancher on the outskirts of town had reported seeing a lone rider watching his property from a distance. The description matched Barlow. "He's still here," Owen said grimly, struggling to pull on his boots despite the pain in his injured arm. "Still waiting for his chance." "You can't go after him," Sophia protested. "You're not fully recovered." "I can't stay here doing nothing while he threatens everything I care about." Owen's gaze met hers. "Everything, Sophia." Before she could argue further, more footsteps sounded on the stairs, and Marshal Dixon appeared in the doorway. "Sheriff, Miss Nash," he greeted them, his expression grave. "We've got a situation." "Barlow?" Owen asked. Dixon nodded. "He sent a message. Says he wants to meet with Mrs. Nash alone. or he'll start picking off townspeople one by one. Sophia felt cold fear wash over her. When and where? No, Owen said firmly. Absolutely not. Noon today, Dixon continued, ignoring Owen's protest. At your ranch, Sheriff. Says it's fitting, since that's where he found her. It's a trap, Owen said. You know that, Dixon. Of course it is, the marshal agreed. But it might be our best chance to end this. They argued back and forth, Owen adamantly against using Sophia as bait, Dixon pragmatic about the limited options available to them. Sophia listened to them debate her fate, a strange calm settling over her. I'll do it, she said finally, interrupting their argument. Both men turned to look at her, surprise evident on their faces. Sophia, no, Owen began. I have to, she said quietly. This is my problem, not Redemption's. I won't have anyone else hurt because of me. You won't be alone, Dixon assured her. We'll have men positioned around the ranch. As soon as Barlow shows himself, we'll move in. And if something goes wrong, Owen demanded, if he gets to her before your men can react, nothing will go wrong. Dixon said with more confidence than Sophia suspected he felt. We've done this kind of thing before. In the end, they agreed on a plan. Sophia would ride to the ranch alone, apparently complying with Barlow's demands. Dixon and his deputies would be positioned in the surrounding woods, with Owen despite his protestations remaining in town as a visible presence to allay any suspicions Barlow might have about a trap. As noon approached, Sophia changed into a simple riding dress, her hands steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. Owen watched her prepare, his face a mask of barely contained anguish. It's not too late to change your mind, he said as she pinned up her hair. Yes, it is, she replied softly. This has to end, Owen. One way or another. He crossed to her then, taking her in his arms with a desperation that spoke volumes. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back. Sophia returned his embrace, memorizing the feel of him, the scent of soap and leather that she had come to associate with safety and home. I promise, she whispered. The ride to the ranch seemed both interminable and far too short. Sophia was acutely aware of Dixon's men shadowing her progress, keeping just out of sight among the trees that lined the trail. The knowledge of their presence was comforting, but she knew that Barlow was a dangerous and unpredictable adversary. The ranch looked peaceful in the midday sun, the cabin and barn standing silent against the backdrop of snow-covered hills. Sophia dismounted in the yard, tying her horse to the hitching post before approaching the cabin door. Mr. Barlow, she called, her voice steadier than she had expected. I'm here as you asked. Silence greeted her. Sophia glanced around, wondering if he was watching from a distance, testing whether she had truly come alone. Come inside, Mrs. Nash. Barlow's voice finally responded from within the cabin. Slowly, with your hands where I can see them. Sophia took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The interior of the cabin was dim after the bright sunlight outside, and it took a moment for her eyes to adjust. When they did, she saw Barlow seated in Owen's chair by the fireplace, a pistol resting casually on his knee. Close the door, he instructed, and then we can have our little chat. Sophia complied, knowing that Dixon's men would be moving into position. All she needed to do was keep Barlow talking long enough for them to surround the cabin. You've led us on quite a chase, Mrs. Nash, Barlow said, gesturing for her to sit in the chair opposite his. All the way from Philadelphia to this charming little wilderness. As I told you at the door that day, Mr. Barlow, I don't know where Thomas hid the money, Sophia said, carefully lowering herself into the chair. Barlow's smile didn't reach his cold eyes. Oh, I think you do. Thomas was many things, but he wasn't a fool. He wouldn't have left for that last job without making sure his beloved wife knew where to find his insurance policy. You didn't know my husband very well if you think he trusted me with anything important, Sophia replied bitterly. I was just another acquisition to him, like his fine horses and tailored suits. A touching display of marital discord, Barlow said dryly. But I'm not convinced. Thomas spoke of you often, always with great pride. My clever Sophia, he would say. So quick with figures. Sophia frowned, a memory stirring at Barlow's words. Thomas had indeed called her that sometimes, usually when he wanted her to check his business ledgers for errors. The ledgers. You're remembering something, Barlow observed, leaning forward slightly. Something important, perhaps? Before Sophia could respond, a sound from outside caught their attention, a twig snapping, followed by a muffled curse. Barlow was on his feet in an instant, gun now pointed directly at Sophia. "You brought them with you," he hissed. "After I specifically told you to come alone." "I did come alone," Sophia protested, fear tightening her chest. "But did you really think the marshal would let me ride out here without protection?" Barlow's face darkened with rage. "Get up," he ordered, grabbing her arm and yanking her to her feet. "We're leaving. Now. And if your protectors try to stop us, they'll be scraping what's left of you off the ground." He dragged her toward the back door of the cabin, keeping her body between himself and any potential threat. Sophia's mind raced, trying to think of a way to alert Dixon without getting herself killed in the process. As they reached the door, an idea struck her. "Wait," she gasped. "The money, I do know where it is." Barlow paused, suspicion warring with greed in his expression. "Where?" "Philadelphia," she said quickly. "In my house." Thomas had a hidden compartment built into the library floor, beneath the oriental rug. "The money's there, all of it." "You're lying," Barlow said, but doubt had crept into his voice. "I'm not," Sophia insisted. "I found it after he was arrested, but I was afraid to touch it. Afraid it would implicate me in his crimes." Barlow studied her face, searching for signs of deception. "If you're telling the truth, why didn't you say so before? Why run all the way out here?" "Because I knew what kind of man you are," Sophia replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I knew you wouldn't let me live even if I gave you what you wanted." A slow smile spread across Barlow's face. "Smart girl. You're right about that, at least." He tightened his grip on her arm. "But it changes nothing. We're still leaving, and you're still my ticket out of here." He pushed open the back door, pulling Sophia with him onto the small porch. They had taken only 2 steps when a voice rang out from the edge of the trees. "Let her go, Barlow." Owen stood there, rifle raised, his injured arm clearly paining him, but his aim steady. Sophia's heart lurched at the sight of him. He was supposed to be in town, safe. Barlow laughed, the sound harsh in the winter air. "Sheriff Stanton, I should have known you wouldn't stay away. Quite the knight in shining armor, aren't you?" He pressed the barrel of his gun against Sophia's temple. "But I'm afraid your rescue attempt ends here. Drop the rifle, or I'll put a bullet in her pretty head." Sophia saw the conflict in Owen's eyes, the desperate calculation of odds that were stacked against them both. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered his weapon. "That's better," Barlow said. "Now kick it away." Owen complied, the rifle skittering across the frozen ground. "Let her go, Barlow," he said again. "It's me you want. I'm the one who killed your men." "Noble, but not very practical," Barlow replied. "The woman stays with me until I'm clear of this godforsaken territory. After that." He shrugged. "Well, we'll see." Time seemed to slow as Sophia watched Owen's gaze shift slightly, focusing on something or someone behind them. A silent communication passed between them, and Sophia understood what she needed to do. In one fluid motion, she drove her elbow hard into Barlow's ribs, simultaneously dropping to her knees. The gun at her temple discharged harmlessly into the air as Barlow staggered backward, cursing. The sound of another shot cracked through the clearing, and Barlow fell, a red stain blooming on his chest. Marshal Dixon stepped from the trees, rifle still raised. "Nice timing," Owen said, rushing to Sophia's side. "Saw you riding out of town," Dixon replied. "Figured you might need backup. Looks like I was right." Sophia barely heard them, her attention fixed on Barlow. The man was still alive, blood bubbling at his lips as he struggled to speak. "You'll never find it," he gasped, his eyes locked on Sophia's. "Thomas, laughing at us all." "I don't care about the money," Sophia told him. "I never did." A strange expression crossed Barlow's face, surprise, perhaps, or a grudging respect. Then the light faded from his eyes, and he was gone. The aftermath was a blur of activity, Dixon's men securing the scene, Doc Miller being summoned to pronounce Barlow dead, statements being taken. Through it all, Owen remained at Sophia's side, his good arm around her shoulders, a solid presence that anchored her to reality. When they were finally alone back in town, in the quiet of Owen's rooms above the jailhouse, Sophia allowed herself to feel the full impact of what had happened. The trembling began in her hands and spread until her entire body shook with delayed shock. Owen held her close, murmuring soothing words against her hair. "It's over," he promised. "It's really over, Sophia. You're safe now." "We both are," she whispered. "I was so afraid when I saw you there, Owen. You were supposed to stay in town." "Did you really think I could?" he asked, pulling back to look into her eyes. "Did you think I could sit here and wait while you faced that monster alone?" Sophia touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "I love you," she said simply. "I think I have since that first night in Redemption, when you helped a frightened stranger find shelter." Owen turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. "I love you too. Enough to follow you anywhere, even into danger." "No more danger," Sophia said firmly. "I've had enough for one lifetime." He smiled, the expression lighting his gray eyes. "Does that mean you're planning to stay in Redemption? Because I've been thinking about rebuilding the ranch, maybe expanding the horse breeding operation. Could use a partner with a head for figures." "Just a business partner?" Sophia asked, her heart suddenly racing. Owen's smile deepened. "Well, I was hoping for something a bit more permanent." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a simple gold band. "It was my mother's," he explained. "I've been carrying it around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." Sophia stared at the ring, tears welling in her eyes. "Owen, I know it's soon," he said quickly. "And if you need time to think about it, I understand. But I love you, Sophia Nash. I want to build a life with you, here in Redemption, if you'll have me." "I don't deserve this happiness," she said, echoing her words from days before. Owen's eyes were steady on hers as he repeated his answer. "Then deserve me anyway. Deserve us, and the life we can build together." Sophia looked at the man before her, honorable, kind, and brave beyond measure, and felt the last of her doubts fall away. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes, I will marry you, Owen Stanton." The wedding took place in the spring, when the hills around Redemption were carpeted with wildflowers. The entire town turned out for the celebration, from Albert Garrison, who gave the bride away, to Mrs. Henderson, who baked a three-tiered cake for the occasion. As Sophia stood beside Owen, speaking vows that bound them together as husband and wife, she marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a frightened widow fleeing her husband's crimes to a woman who had found not just safety, but love and purpose in a small frontier town. After the ceremony, as they greeted well-wishers in the churchyard, Marshal Dixon approached with a telegram in hand. "Wedding present, of sorts," he said, handing the paper to Sophia. "Thought you might want to know they found your husband's missing money. It was in a bank in Boston, under his mother's maiden name. The government seized it, of course, but they've determined you had no knowledge or involvement in his crimes. You're officially cleared, Mrs. Stanton." Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was still carrying. "Thank you, Marshal," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Dixon tipped his hat. "Just doing my job, madam. You two take care of each other now." With a nod to Owen, he moved away, leaving the newlyweds alone for a moment. Owen squeezed her hand. "How does it feel to be truly free?" Sophia looked up at her husband, at the love and pride shining in his eyes. "Wonderful," she said honestly. "But you know what feels even better? Belonging somewhere. Belonging to someone." "We belong to each other," Owen agreed, bending to kiss her softly. "Now and always." As the afternoon sun bathed the town in golden light, Sophia thought about the strange twists of fate that had led her to Redemption. She had arrived broken and afraid, convinced she didn't deserve happiness after the devastation her husband had caused. But Owen had seen beyond her fear and guilt to the woman beneath, a woman capable of strength and courage, of building a new life from the ashes of the old. "Deserve me anyway," he had told her, and in doing so, had taught her to believe in herself again. Later that evening, as they danced under lantern light in the town square, Sophia leaned close to whisper in her husband's ear, "Thank you for finding me." Owen smiled, pulling her closer in his arms. "Thank you for letting yourself be found." In the years that followed, Redemption continued to grow and prosper, as did the Stanton Ranch. Owen and Sophia welcomed 2 children, a boy with his father's storm-gray eyes and a girl with her mother's quick mind for figures. Together, they built the life they had both dreamed of, founded on mutual respect and a love that had been forged in the crucible of danger and sacrifice. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the ranch work was done, they would sometimes sit on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching the stars appear one by one above the Colorado hills. In those moments, Sophia would remember her husband's words from so long ago, "Deserve me anyway," and marvel at how learning to accept love had taught her, finally, to believe she deserved happiness after all.